Hello, everybody. My name is Glenn. I'm your pain-free personal trainer in Newmarket, Ontario, and this is the Growth Lab podcast, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you feel confident in your life, in your body, taking care of this beautiful, neat vehicle that we have so that you can see and experience all the possibilities that life has to offer. And today we're talking about killing the posture myth. I personally can't tell you how many times people come see me and they have problems with their body, or they have frustrations about their strength and their quality of life, and they talk about posture, and they tell me all these different things that I wish I could just remove from their brain and remove from their thought process, because it's hindering them. It's not helping them. It's actually outdated, old information, and a lot of it is BS that other professionals keep peddling. So today we're going to be discussing a whole bunch of different topics. We're going to talk about some of the myths that are out there, like muscular imbalances in corrective exercises for posture. We're going to talk about the myth of how you're supposed to be tall with your chest out, shoulders back. But more important than that, we're going to talk about what posture actually is. What can we do with postural information? What inferences might we make about your health and wellness? As it comes to posture, what can you actually change about your posture that will ultimately improve your quality of life? This one is going to be an absolute banger. I love talking about posture because there's so much stuff out there that we can dispel, and there's so much information that I feel like I can give you today to make you feel your best. So let's jump into it. So let's start here, the most fundamental place. What is posture? I put it to you that posture is how your body holds itself moment to moment. Think about this. You wake up in the morning, you're energized, you feel amazing, with the best night of sleep ever. You're holding yourself a little taller, maybe you're walking a little bit more briskly, you feel like you've got a lot of fluid of movement. Your body has very little aches or pains or tightness because you're feeling very fresh. But then you go through a long, laborious day. Maybe it was cognitively challenging. Maybe you do a lot of physical tasks like gardening or taking care of the house or family members. What happens by the time you get close to that hour before you got to go to bed? You might be leaning over to your side, slumping over a little bit more. You might be moving a little slower. You may be tilted one way versus the other. What's happened here? Because your body's been taxed through the day, through both cognitively demanding and physically demanding tasks, your body has essentially changed the way it holds itself based on its current inputs and conditions from all the different tissues and joints and nerves in the body. So let's examine this a little further. Your body's amazing. And one of the ways it regulates itself is through neural feedback loops. Your brain gets information from all over your body all the time, and it decides how to make you feel, how to move you, how to hold yourself. It gets it from the organs, from joint receptors, from muscle. Inside your muscle, you have a certain amount of stored glycogen, which is to say stored energy in the form of usable sugars. And as those stores run low, your brain detects that signal and will change the way you move. It also can detect if there are different waste products that are building up in your muscles. And as muscle waste products build up from fatigue, your body may shift your posture to not use those muscle groups so much. And there are also molecules that get released from your muscles under more fatigued states that act as hormonal mediator signalers in your brain that tell you the current health and energy status of your muscles. So in this way, our muscles are huge contributors in terms of feedback for our posture. Now, our posture can also be affected at the level of the brain in a whole bunch of really cool ways. Now, you may have heard about this before. We use an energy source in our muscles and in our nerves and our brain called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. You don't have to remember that, but it's the thing that mitochondria make. It's the energy source of the body, right? Mitochondria take in fats and proteins, and they go through a whole process, and ultimately what we get is ATP. When we have lots of ATP, this energy source in our brain, we feel very energized and very awake. But as we go through the day, we do different activities, ATP breaks down as we use that for energy, and we end up with a molecule called AMP, adenosine monophosphate. Again, you don't need to remember the names, you have to know they exist. Now, what's interesting is when we have high amounts of AMP in our brain, which is very common at the end of a day, this stimulates us to feel tired. and sleepy. It's actually one of the things that triggers us to want to go to sleep. It's high amounts of this molecule. And as you've already heard me talk about in other parts of this podcast, as we start getting these signalers for being more sleepy and tired or more fatigued, we start holding our posture differently. We start leaning on different things. We start maybe collapsing more. We can't really stay upright. We can't really stay as upright as we'd like because of how we feel and the energy levels that we have in our brain. And so as a result of this, the posture is ultimately effective. Fun sidebar, it's one of the reasons why we love caffeine so much, is caffeine competes for the same receptors as this AMP. It's almost like a tug of war. And so we love having coffee in the morning because it blocks up a whole bunch of these different receptors and we feel more awake. It's one of the reasons why people love having their coffee in the afternoon, is because when we have that natural lull, the caffeine will help wake us up. The caffeine doesn't actually wake us up, but it just blocks the binding of other receptors and other molecules that would make us otherwise tired. So this is one of the ways that the brain has an effect on our posture. Now, in addition to that, we also have what's known as a circadian rhythm. You might have otherwise heard of this as the natural body clock. We have natural times of day where we feel more awake and more sleepy. We're usually more awake first thing in the morning when sunlight hits our eyes. And as the day goes on, we get more fatigued as there's theoretically less light available hitting our retinas. And as a result of that, we feel more sleepy. And we can get into a whole other conversation in another podcast about the importance of sleep-wake cycles and not having light hit our eyes late in the day. But the point I'm trying to make here is that there are a lot of other subconscious processes going on in the body that will affect how awake or stimulated we feel or how tired we feel, which ultimately will affect our posture and how we feel like moving and how we hold our body. And there's the obvious last thing, which is the brain receives input from all over the body, and it has to make sense of that. And then it tells you how to hold your posture based on all that feedback. Now, we can also consider tissue health and how it's going to affect our posture as well. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care who you are. If you have a tremendous amount of knee and ankle pain on one side, your body will shift weight off that area onto your other leg so you don't cause further damage and experience pain and discomfort. And we know that if you change one area of your body, it can have a profound effect on all the other areas. If I have a right leg that's really, really sore and painful and I shift my weight to my left-hand side, that's going to start overloading my left foot, my left knee, my left hip, different parts of my back, and ultimately maybe have myself lean over one direction or lean forward or lean back, or whichever way your body decides to manage that extra load and challenge on that side of your body. And so absolutely the health of all your different tissues can play a huge role. So consider now that you have a lifetime of stimulus and movement history that your body knows and will have preferred, we'll call it almost default settings that are still malleable, but almost default settings that it uses to move and hold your posture day to day. If you ended up having a major knee surgery or ACL replacement on your right leg, and then you tore it again, and then you have to go through that whole process again, and you had spent months and months and months recovering, that joint isn't the same. How it communicates with the brain will not be the same. It's possible the strength and endurance will be less on that side. And as you use that leg during the day, and you run out of energy and you run out of strength, your output will change. And you might have been dealing with this for months and months and years and years and years and years and years. And your body's default positioning, how it wants to move neurally, may be well conditioned to deal with those circumstances. Take this a step further. Most people, as they get into their 50s and 60s, have a litany of life experience that changes the way they hold their posture. I have a client who's had 4 herniated discs. He's had a severed tendon in his left forearm. He had an elbow graft where they took tissue from his hip. He also shattered his ankle. He had 2 torn rotator cuffs, surgery twice on one side. Can you imagine someone telling this gentleman, all you have to do is pull your shoulders back and stand up taller? I'm sorry, but it's not a reality for him. And it's not a reality for most people. And when we give advice like that, we're essentially negating their lifetime of history that's led them to hold themselves how they're holding themselves right now in this moment. And so I'm hoping you can see that how our body decides posture is incredibly complex, from the integration of signals coming from our muscular tissue, our bone tissue, our organs, our brain, our sleep-wake cycle, and our circadian rhythm. There's a lot of different things going on here. And so it's not as simple as sit upright and pull your shoulder blades back. It's just not. So ultimately, what posture will tell us is our preferred default settings in terms of how we want to move and how we hold our posture. And it's up to us as individuals, and if you're listening to this and you're health professionals, to figure out how does posture fit in with a treatment plan or an exercise plan, or how do we use this data to otherwise manipulate the body through exercise and training to help us feel better, move better, and ultimately give us the quality of life that we're looking for. So here are the considerations I want you to think about when it comes to how we can use this information. Well, I put it to you as this. If you want to improve the strength and the endurance of your body, the mobility that you have, the flexibility that you have, the confidence and trust in this meat vehicle, we'd want to have as much access to as much range of motion as possible. And we'd want to feel strong in those positions. And we would want to be able to use the body for whatever amount of time that we want to. So when I take a look at posture and I examine it, I'm asking myself, why are they perhaps more side bent to one side than the other? And can they move out of that position freely, or do they seem stuck there? Because if I have someone who, when they're lying down on the table, they're more side bent to the left. And if they're standing up, they also tend to be leaning over to the left-hand side. Can they move to the right out of that position well, or can they not? What I do is I take posture and then I check range of motion. So if I have someone lying down and they're stuck leaning to the left-hand side, I'll ask them, can you side bend to the right? Okay, good. Now come back to your starting position. Can you side bend to the left? Okay, come back to the starting position. Because if they're already leaned to the left-hand side, they shouldn't be able to get much further over to the left because they're already kind of there. However, if they're stuck to the left and they can still move to the left more and they can't really get to the right, I'm starting to ask some questions. What about moving to the right does your body not like? Why does it not want to let you get to that position? And then from there, we can start testing and reverse engineering backwards. That's why I think it's so important to be able to take someone's postural information and then on top of it, put their range of motion and check their flexibility and then test and see if they're strong there. Because if someone is stuck to one side like the left and they can't move very well to the right, and then we put them in the right-hand side and we test those muscles and they're weaker and they have less output, and they don't feel strong there, well, then I've got pretty good data and information that suggests, yeah, there's something about side bending to the right that your body doesn't like doing. And if your body is weaker side bending to the right and it doesn't have the capability to do that, you can bet that when you're standing or moving around or pushing yourself in your day-to-day life, your body's probably not trusting that right-hand side as much, and it's probably using your left way more. And because of that, you're overloading your left-hand side, and who knows what the downstream effects of that are. And so we've got to really think about posture on this deeper level. It's not about standing tall and shoulders back. The information on posture is really a great indicator of what's not working. And where do we start in terms of training these muscles so they do work? And how will that change and influence posture? Because in this same example, if I identify that side bending to the right-hand side in the trunk is something that somebody needs to improve upon, and we do that, and they get better, we actually start seeing some interesting things. Oftentimes, they actually start holding themselves differently. They might look a little bit straighter on the table or standing up. Or maybe their posture doesn't change that much afterwards. Maybe they're still kind of leaned over to the left-hand side, but they can move to the right a lot more freely. And that feels good for them. And it takes stress off a part of their body, so they feel like they've got less pain and less discomfort. That's really the value here, and I can't stress it enough. The real value of posture is a strong indicator of a place that you could do some work on for yourself to improve how you move and feel. That's amazing. And I love it. I love talking about it. It brings me so much joy. It's so great. So, what should we be really concerned about when it comes to posture? We should really be concerned about, do we have the necessary strength and endurance in the muscles and joints in our body to do what we want to do day to day without pain and discomfort? I'll be honest with you. Most of my clients, they could care less what they look like. They could care less how their body holds their posture. If I ask them the question, your posture might not change, but if we work on what we need to, and you get stronger, and you have more endurance, and you move more freely, and you have more mobility, and you have more output, and you feel better, and there's less pain, less discomfort, would that be considered a win for you? I have a pretty much 100% response rate of yes, that's fine with me. Sure, there's a couple exceptions where people don't want to walk with a limb because they don't like the way it looks. It's a bit of a different story. But this is the real beauty of looking at posture, and what we should really be concerned about is, do we have the necessary output all over our body to do what we want to do? And the way we use posture just to identify those potential areas that may not have the output that end up causing us pain and discomfort or robbing us of our quality of life. Thank you everyone for indulging me in this conversation and joining me for this episode of the Growth Lab podcast. My name is Glenn. I'm a pain-free personal trainer in Newmarket, Ontario, and I want to see everybody moving and feeling their best, having confidence in their bodies so they can say yes to all the opportunities that life presents to them, and even the ones they haven't come across just yet. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one.